If you've collected art on the Tezos blockchain, you've likely seen the work of our next guest, whose art covers all things esoteric, occult, alchemical, and magical. Today we're thrilled to welcome Daniel W. to the show to discuss his art and his practice. Artist Journal, May 17th, 2023, broadcasting live to the world from Berlin and New York City on Rug Radio via Twitter Spaces. My name is Adrian Pocabelli, and we welcome back co-host, artist, and conversationalist to the show, Rune Toon. Rune, how is your week going?
It's going a lot better than it was last week. I've had a little bit more time to do some artwork.
Well, congratulations to that. And we can all, I need to refill my coffee, actually. Congratulations. What are you working on?
I'm working on, I feel like I'm working on about 10 different things at once sometimes. Just exploring some more serious gifts. What I really want to do soon is get one of those infinite objects, digital screens that we've talked about in previous shows. I just got to see what those look like in person. I'm like dying to know. So I'm trying to prepare a gift that I feel really good about in order to get it on one of those digital screens. Because I feel like that's truly a good way to sell digital artwork outside of just NFTs.
That's so interesting. I mean, this idea of, in a sense, you're trying to sell the digital artwork as a physical piece, right?
Correct.
That's so interesting. There's so many permutations here. It's almost paralyzing, the possibilities. So just out of curiosity, I guess you know where to buy it. I suppose you just go to, is it Infinite Objects? I assume they have a website and you can just buy it. Do you know how much they are?
The cheapest one, I believe, is roughly $120. Now, I have not yet made one and checked out and seen what all the fees and all of that are, but they say on their website the cheapest one, which is their smallest frame, is $120.
Well, it just sounds so cool, and if you make a nice work, I bet it would look like twice as good if you put it in the whatever that is. I guess it's mylar. I assume it's not glass. I don't know if you know.
I don't know. It could be epoxy, it could be mylar. I'm not really sure. It could be some type of resin.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll be fascinating to hear what happens there should you do that. And so, yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds great, and congratulations on making some art. For me, I have not made any art. I had the classic kind of Berlin situation. We're always looking for a place to live. I have to find a new place to live. So there will be a new background. No. I know. I imagine it's as bad in New York as Berlin. I mean, it's extremely tight.
Yes.
I have a couple of good leads though, so that is good. But yeah, so not much art getting done this week.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. It's just part of what it is to live in these cities, as you know. So I'm thrilled to welcome Daniel W. to the show. Daniel, I've seen your work for ever since I started, perusing the, Tezos blockchain and object from very early on, your distinguished style and everything. So I'm extremely thrilled for you to come here. Tell us, where are you calling from, if you don't mind me asking? And you might be on mute.
Oh, my bad. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Sir.
Okay, cool. I'm in São Paulo, Brazil. Brazil's ashtray, as we call it. And hey, how you guys doing? Glad to be here.
Doing great. Very excited to talk to you and dive into some horror genre.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, well, that's super cool. I've never heard of Brazil's ashtray before. Is that close to Rio de Janeiro?
Around 4 hours from Rio.
Okay. Wow.
It's kind of far.
And just out of curiosity, I'm kind of, because I come from Canada and also living in Germany here, where the weather kind of sucks, often. How is the weather out there? I mean, I guess it's turning into fall right now.
Right now it's cold as hell. I mean, it's really cold. Really? I mean, it's sunny, but it's super cold.
Okay.
but I mean, we just came out of like some really hot days a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're switching it up now, and it's super hellishly cold now.
Interesting. And hellishly cold is probably like a nice balmy 15 degrees, I imagine, in Brazil. Uh, but I'm just joking. I mean, I come from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And let me tell you, cold is like, I don't know if you do Celsius, but it's minus 30 degrees is cold.
Oh no, yeah. Well, I mean, it's no comparison to Canada. Obviously, cold for us is like, like you said, 15 degrees. It's already
Yeah.
super fucking cold for us.
Okay. Oh, you guys are spoiled out there. So, anyway,
No,
so
yeah,
tell us
definitely.
tell us what you're up to in terms of like I've seen your drawings and everything, and it seems like you're focused mostly on this illustrative style, and it's you can instantly recognize your work because you really
Hmm.
focus. Like, there's a real kind of trademark look to it, which is great. It's instantly recognizable as yours. So tell us a little bit about your background. Like, did you study art? And tell us from the a little bit, not too long, but from the beginning. Like, how did you get into art? And what are you trying to do? And just what motivated you? How did you get into art?
I've never been. I've never officially studied, but I've always been. Ever since I was a kid, I was always that kid who draws. There's always that kid in the classroom that spends the whole day drawing and not paying attention and stuff. That was me, and I didn't stop. And I'd like to. When I was a kid, I really like copying the cartoons I'd watch or the comics I'd read. And oh, my bad. Then, well, a few years later, I stopped drawing for a bit because I started focusing on music. I had a band for like 10 years or so. And then after that, I came back to drawing. I said, okay, let's go back to my initial thing. And that's when I started drawing online comics for like around 7 years or something. And right after that, and that was right before getting into NFTs. I started working as a freelance animator, specifically doing music videos for local rap acts,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fun. But music industry can be a pain in the ass. And like around 2020, 2021 ish, 2021. Yeah. I got into NFTs. I got onboarded onto Tezos. And um, like I
Is
said,
is
oh, sorry.
Tezos where you is
Oh,
Tezos where you
excuse me.
first started?
Yes, yes. Because I had worked with a local rapper called Nil, and I did a couple of videos for him. And a bit later, he released another song, and he had this really cool 3D video for it. And I went to talk to the guy because I usually like to link up with the people who in the same scene, for collabs and such. And his name, my bad, I'm still kind of shy.
All
But
good, all good. We're all running
yeah,
on empty here, Daniel W. So all good.
yeah, no problem. And this guy is Kosha, his name. He was involved right in the beginning of the original Hen. And I saw that he posted a few things about crypto art, NFTs, and such, and I had no idea what that was. And I was, around the beginning of 2021, and I went to talk to him, and he gave me the rundown about everything, and I was like, okay, cool. Then, but I kind of brushed it off at first. Yeah. So, but then a few weeks later, I remember another friend posting a few things, and he was posting on OpenSea. And I asked him again, and he told me, and he explained it a bit better, and I was like, oh, damn, that sounds interesting. I mean, selling digital art, especially as an animator, because as an animator, the only way you can actually make some money is by being involved in projects. So the whole perspective of being able to sell animation loops and like illustrators sell prints and such, that was really appealing for me. But I took a look at OpenSea. It was kind of okay, cool. I'll brush it later, leave it for later. And I went to talk to Kosha again, and he said, "Okay, hop onto Discord, and I'll explain it better to you." And he explained the whole thing to me. It was I think it was 2-3 days before they released the original hen, and he
Oh,
explained
so
everything. He said, "Okay, here." Well,
you were very
it's
early then. Like,
yeah, super
even,
early, super early.
yeah. Before Hen started.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super early.
cool.
And then he explained everything to me, and he said, "Oh, here, have 3 Tezos, so you can start out." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, dude. I'll pay you back." And I say, "No, it's okay. Just onboard a couple other people, do the same thing with them, and it's all good." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Kush is a really cool guy, dude. And then at first I kind of minted it sporadically. I had a few pieces laying around that I posted to IG, and I thought, okay, let's try it out. Then I minted a few animations, and it was funny because every now and then I'd go back like a couple of months and see that a few things had sold, and I was like, oh, cool. And it was funny because it was specifically at times where I was kind of strapped for cash, and I'd go back to my wallet and see, oh shit, oh cool, I made some money here, can pay the bills. And I was sort of starting to get kind of uh, disillusioned with the whole animation gigs I was doing because, like I said, music industry can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
And
and I assume you're doing like contract work too, and like half the battle with contract work is getting paid half the time,
Yep.
right?
yeah,
I mean, so yeah,
but
so
yeah,
and
that's the
especially
thing, though.
go ahead, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially in the music industry, it must be very difficult. Yes, continue.
Oh yeah, yes. And the thing is, though, I mean, contract work was a bit less than half of the work I was doing. The other half was mostly underground artists. So there's not much contract involved, though. So, and the thing wasn't even being paid because I was, but the thing is how I was paid. I mean, it started getting me pissed off because you had all these guys with flashy clothes and and chains and whatnot, and but the guys would pay me like ridiculously low prices. That was fucking awful. So I started getting kind of disillusioned with the whole thing, and I thought, well, let's jump into this. And I think it was around 2020, by the end of 2021, that I started taking it a bit more seriously. That's when I minted my what was the first ones I made? Let me just check it out here. My bad. The principles of beautiful made fresh.
Now
That's
I'm looking on your page
huh?
here. So if I go to the oldest, I see the vessel. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that was the first one that I minted as a test. I said, look, let's
Got
try
it.
it out because I made this animation, and a friend of mine, he had just found this VCR and a camera he had at home.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Oh, cool. Yeah, let's run the animation through that and let's see how it goes." And it came out really cool. I really liked the result. But it was like when you're just gathering dust in my Instagram, and I thought,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's try to turn this into something. Most of my first pieces were like pieces that were just sitting around the Instagram, and I thought, well, let's just see where this goes. And it started selling, and then I decided to do the Redux collection, which I had done a few pieces on Instagram, and I thought, let's turn this into a legit collection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when things kind of went off. When I started taking it seriously, and I said, okay, fuck this freelance gig, let's focus on this now. And it's been kind of like this ever since.
That's amazing. And from what I understand, I mean, this is like you kind of went full time on this to a certain degree. Is that
Mm-hmm.
like that's impressive? I mean, because not many people actually go full time on this. I mean, but I mean, I guess it's all relative, right? Like if you have kind of these, like I feel your pain, dealing with
Mhm.
contract work in the past. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, this isn't so bad, and
Yeah.
so that's cool. And I assume the money goes a little further somewhere in, say, Brazil compared to maybe the US or,
Oh, definitely.
France, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of the advantages of living in a third world country. I mean, it can this can be a job for me,
Wow.
and I mean, definitely money was a huge aspect for me, but also the creative freedom of the whole thing was what caught me, because even though I was working with music videos and I had a certain degree of creative freedom, I was always dealing with a client. So I always had to wait for somebody's okay. And the last three jobs I did before just leaving the whole thing, I had a couple of misunderstandings with the client, so that kind of rubbed me wrong. So the whole prospect of just being able to create freely without having to worry about the input of clients and such, it was just amazing. Because if you see my whole first year, it was just me trying stuff out, just like, okay, now I'm gonna do some redux pieces, or now I'm gonna do some mushrooms, and now I'm gonna just trying shit out, because it still is fun as hell. I mean, to be able to just create what you feel like and be able to make a living out of it. I mean, more than half of these things I've made would probably just be sitting in my Instagram for like years and not turn into anything.
Well, and another thing that I like about it is, like, I mean, I bet you feel like you're making work that you might not have made because all of a sudden you kind of have to make some work, right? And I think that
Hmm.
that mushroom series, I think, is the first thing I collected from you. And I think, yeah,
Really?
it was great. I mean, I loved that series. It was so fun, and it was so kind of easy to collect because all of a sudden it's like I was
Uh-huh.
there at the start, so I could buy all of them as they came out. It was kind of fun to try and get the ones you might have missed, and then you get the bonus one at the end. That was a great
Yeah,
series.
that's cool, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun to do. That was fun to do. That was partially me experimenting and partially me challenging myself as well. Because you mentioned style. I've been like most artists. I've been my whole life trying to find my style. And right before getting on board onto Tezos, I kind of found a place there that I thought, okay, this looks good. I'm kind of not exactly satisfied with what I found here, but I think this is a path. So that's when I started doing the Redux pieces to sort of challenge myself to be able to draw anything I want in my style. Uh, so the mushrooms kind of came about sort of like as a challenge as well. I mean, I'm super fond of mushrooms. I think they're super fascinating. And I thought, okay, let's try to do some fucking mushrooms, And it
Yeah,
ended up being super fun.
I love how the psychedelic ones always catch the premium too. Those are the ones that
Yeah.
those are worth the most.
Yeah, I guess people just love some trippy shit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the mushrooms, and actually on everything, before I forget, I just want to
Mhm.
bring this up. Uh, on the color, like I find that conceptually interesting because it seems like you're using like a CMYK color
Mhm.
scheme. Is that the and kind of a print sort of feel? Can you speak a little bit just about maybe the colors and even just like that print aspect of your work?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, the colors they came about limitations. I mean, I have a serious issue with making choices, and especially when it comes to colors. There's like so many colors. So I just thought, well, how about if I just limit my palette to four colors, and that'll make it easier for me. And if I need one thing or another in a different color, then I'll just use it. But let's try to make everything based on these four colors. And the whole print deal, I have this weird thing where whenever I'm painting on canvas, I try to make it as, for lack of a better word, as digital as possible. Because I tried to make the line super straight and the color super flat. And when I'm working digitally, I try to make it as organic as possible. I mean, I think it stems from that whole deal of me challenging myself to do certain things. I mean, art I view as a way of challenging my creativity, and I've always liked it when I've seen animators and illustrators making digital art that looks super organic, especially animation. I love seeing digital animation that looks traditional, and it kind of went from there. But the whole CMYK thing is definitely due to me limiting myself to make it easier to choose colors.
It's kind of funny. It kind of creates this natural limitation. Like, it's just something that you start out with, but then it kind of stuck. It seems. It
Yeah,
seems
yeah,
like. And before I just pass it on to Runtune here, tell me a little bit about the canvases. So you actually, like, you mean you're an animator, but
yeah.
do you actually? I mean, were you making canvases? You were saying, and do you actually make paintings and whatnot?
Yes, yeah. Throughout the pandemic, I was painting a lot. It was a way of me to sort of get my head off things, because I already had my kid. Then we were expecting our second kid, and everything was just stressful with the whole pandemic. So I thought, man, I got to find something that isn't my work, but is, because the thing about working with art is that it always starts out as a hobby, then it becomes your job, then all of a sudden you notice you don't have a hobby anymore because your hobby become your job. So so it kind of fucks up your mind a bit, I think. So I thought, well, let me just start painting then, because back then I was just animating. So I thought, if I start painting, it'll be something that involves art but isn't my job, so I can still create and draw. And I started painting back then, I think 2020. Yeah, it was around 2020. Uh, but I did a couple of paintings. I sold a couple of paintings back then, and but after I got into NFTs, I sort of stopped. But I've been planning to go back uh, in the near future because it's fun. It's super therapeutic to lay down some paint.
One thing I love is just like your stuff is so recognizable. And a lot of times when you're doing this like referential work, like if it's, in reference to either a movie or a famous piece of artwork, it just feels very natural and it's so polished that
Oh, cool! Thanks, man.
it feels like it belongs to you.
No,
What are
thanks.
some of the works that I'm most interested in of the stuff that you do
Hmm.
are these kind of like surreal horror movie sorts of like settings with like interiors and apartments and houses and
Hmm.
stuff. What is
Hmm.
what was kind of the initial like what are your inspirations behind that?
Well, I've always been a huge horror buff. I love I mean, not necessarily only horror, but I love how people are able to pull certain feelings through art and make people feel things, especially when it comes to both comedy and horror. I find it very, very interesting when
Yeah,
people
both those
do it well.
genres kind of operate in the same way, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, they do. It's so visceral, and it just gets to you. I've always been fascinated with people with seeing good horror artists or seeing good comedy artists doing their thing, and you just see it and you feel something. And it's always been kind of frustrating for me in a way, doubly frustrating actually, because I've always been um, kind of bad at drawing backgrounds, and I've always had this cartoony kind of kind of style, which doesn't fit very well in the horror genre.
Yeah, that
So
illustration can be rough because, background sometimes you're trying to make something recessive, but with like graphic style, it's like everything's kind of, dominant aside from small details.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So so it came back to me kind of challenging myself again. I thought, okay, let me try to make something disturbing, and at the same time challenge myself to draw backgrounds because I've never been able to draw backgrounds properly, but I've always been fascinated by drawing backgrounds, especially since 6 or 7 years ago. I read this manga called Blame by Tsutomu Nihei, if I'm not mistaken. And and what caught me about that manga in specific, it's an action manga and so on, but it's super silent. And there's characters, but the main character of the whole story is the scenario. Because if I'm not mistaken, the artist used to be an architect, so he puts a lot of emphasis on the backgrounds, and the backgrounds kind of tell much more story than the characters themselves. Which many pages they'll just be silent, and you'll just kind of have to piece it together by what you see on the background. And that kind of caught me. I've never before that. I had never seen backgrounds in that sort of light to as a way of telling or passing a feeling or telling a story. And and I've always had this how can I say it, places I have this uncanny valley feeling with places, you know, especially when they yeah, especially when they used to be lived in. I've always found it weird whenever I moved out of places and I finished taking everything out of the apartment or the house and seeing the house all empty after spending years there with, you know, the couch and the TV and, you know, so on and so forth. It always struck me as kind of odd ever since I was a kid. And, uh, how can I put it? Uh, it's odd and it's kind of eerie in a way for me. And I thought, okay, well, let's try to 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 create some sort of horror out of that, or not necessarily horror, but something unsettling. And that's when I started trying to create these pieces. And I've always been sort of inspired by old '90s, '80s adventure PC games, first person, that always relied heavily on backgrounds, and I always thought those were kind of uncanny as well because they're there, but they're so devoid of life, and it just feels weird. And I like the weird feeling they give off,
You know, it's
especially
part of
because
it's like you know, the empty space kind of like leaves a lot of room for the imagination, you know.
exactly. And it kind of worked as a counterbalance for me because most of my pieces tend to be full of information. I like to fill the whole thing with information sometimes, and you know they tend to be colorful and whatnot. And the other part of the challenge of making these more horror inspired pieces is trying to work with emptiness and stillness, and that's been kind of interesting for me. That's what inspired me a lot to kind of counterbalance things a bit, you know, from especially coming out of especially with these pieces I've been doing lately that are more animated, and they tend to be all kind of erratic, and so it's been an interesting counterbalance to do a piece that's always moving and kind of twitchy and whatnot, then do another piece that's just still and empty and kind of off-putting in a way. Um, I'm kind of influenced as well by the Danish painter Wilhelm Hammershøi, um, which I find it's really his pieces are very interesting because he paints a lot of mundane things, a lot of pieces based on his house, and if I'm not mistaken, his wife, and it all has this really weird feeling to it. He turns the mundane into weird, but the thing is, the mundanity of his pieces are like 1800s mundanity. So I mean, we feel the eeriness to it, but it's not something that we have experienced. So I try to bring that a bit to our reality a bit by adding you know, sockets to the walls, or light switches, etc.
I can
I
totally.
kind of like the.
I, I was just saying I can totally see it. I looked up the painter, Wilhelm Hammershoy, and feel free
Yeah,
to
exactly.
post a link. I'll figure out
Hmm.
if I can post a link. Um,
Hmm.
but I totally see it. I totally see the influence, and it's kind of like, again, I almost want to call it like this heavy, oppressive atmosphere. Like you say, like it's kind of mundane, but it's also kind of it's kind of unsettling. And there's a kind of a weird,
Yes.
I don't know if I'd call it darkness. That's almost too strong, but there's something about it. Right?
Yeah, like you said, it's oppressive. I mean, I think oppressive kind of sums it up well because it's all these closed up spaces, and it's not inviting. It's a house. Clearly, it's a house, but it's not inviting. It's just off a bit in a way. It's kind of weird, and it kind of came about as well because before I think it was, yeah, around 2020, from 2019 to 2021, we used to live in a building which was the inspiration for the old building collection, and it was a really old building, and the apartment we lived in was kind of on the bottom of the building. So it was really closed off. So it was a really weird experience going through the pandemic inside the building because we wouldn't see the street because it was all closed off. The sunlight didn't hit very well down there. So in a way that inspired me to see the horror in these kind of oppressive environments. The see the how can I put it, the unsettlingness for lack of a better word, um, in a house, which is kind of weird because when you're in a house you're supposed to feel safe. You're not supposed to feel unsettled or anything. And it just hit me when I found Wilhelm Hammershoy's pieces because it's exactly that. It's a house. It's supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to feel comfortable, but it's not. It's weird. There's this person, standing with her back towards the painter, and there's just these things that are kind of off. And I think that's kind of it hits that uncanny valley thing because it's supposed to be a house. It's supposed to be comfortable, but it isn't. It's cold and it's, like you said, oppressive, and and there's a certain horror to that when you come to think about it. Living in a place that makes you feel off. And that's the kind of thing I tried to capture in these pieces.
Absolutely, it reminds me like almost of Edgar Allan Poe,
Uh
and just
huh.
right, and just like this kind of almost like the horror of the mundane. I want to say,
Yes.
uh, and even like, I mean, the surrealist too. Again, I'm kind of back to Magritte and this,
Hmm.
and I mean, Magritte loved Edgar Allan Poe actually, which is interesting.
Really?
Magritte was super influenced, I think, at least in terms of the titles. He read, I mean, a lot of the surrealists read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. So it's kind of
Oh,
interesting how this, yeah, it's kind of like this theme, this of architecture and just almost the horror of three-dimensional space, dare we say.
yeah.
J.G. Ballard actually had this kind of cryptic question: does the angle
Mm.
between two walls have a happy ending? That was almost
Oh,
his
damn.
take on kind of what you're saying here, and I'm still trying to figure
Uh
out what he
huh.
meant by that. But I think it's almost like this anxiety, the psychological anxiety of three-dimensional space,
Uh huh.
which is
That is
pretty
interesting.
yeah. So
I
anyways,
mean,
yeah.
It looks
could
like
it?
this.
Because it is. Oh, sorry. Go on. Go on. Go
It looks
on.
like this Hammershoy. Uh, it looks like he did a lot of different paintings of that same sort of window. Like
Yeah, it does.
he returned to that window over and over and over again. I'm looking at. I have seen this artist before, but I haven't uh, dived deep into the work. But I'm seeing this return to that same room. It seems like, which is
Yeah, it's
interesting.
always the window. It's always the window, and it's always this room with a door, and behind the door there's another door, and sometimes there's a chair by the left of the door or a table on the right, and you can see that. I mean, I obviously didn't know the guy, and I don't know that much about him personally, but it feels like a prison of sorts. And I think that's
Yeah.
interesting because, like I said, it gives this really uncanny feeling to the whole idea of a house, you know. And I've always been fascinated by the whole concept of, uh, for lack of a better word, the haunted house, you know, the off-putting house. Because I mean, you it's a space with that was built with because it's different. I mean, when you're out in nature, there's a certain it can be off-putting in a way, but still you're in nature, you're surrounded by life. But when you're inside a concrete block, it's different because it's made to for a certain purpose, you know.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't fulfill this purpose of keeping you safe or keeping you well or just holding your things when it's empty, it's just weird, you know. It's just weird to be in this place and it's not what it's supposed to be. I find it very very fascinating, the feeling of that. And
Well,
it's it huh?
I was just going to say you hit it on target, that whole feeling in your work, and as you say,
Uh-huh.
it's
Oh,
it's
cool.
almost like another angle on this is like when someone has died, previously, or if there was a murder in
Hmm.
a house and then people move in and that story,
Hmm.
there's just this sense of foreboding. It's like the
Yeah.
imagination. It's almost like we want to put, you know, we want to personify or anthropomorphize the space,
Oh,
like we
definitely.
want to
And
give it a personality.
I
I
do
mean,
have another question for you.
okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
yeah, with a lot of with a lot of your work that you put up, sometimes you have some like writing for the caption on object for
Mhm.
stuff in quotes. Is that what are the things are you like quoting certain stories or books or movies, or is this just something that you come up with on your own?
You mean these pieces specifically, the ones with the
Yeah.
backgrounds?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
oh,
for instance,
the,
there's one titled like 3 a.m. and then there's something that you put in quotes like every night at 3 a.m. It's the same thing, et cetera, et
oh,
cetera.
it's that's that's just me trying to be a writer.
So you
I
are
kind
coming
of
up with that, okay? Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
always curious. Sometimes the quote marks lead me to believe it's from something.
Yeah, because that's the thing with horror. I really enjoy the most. I like short horror, like short stories or like those one sentence horrors. I like. I think horror is its most effective when it starts out of nowhere and it just stops out of nowhere, and it leaves you like, what the fuck, you know? It makes you. That's the kind of thing that keeps you thinking for like days and days and days, and revisiting that, and the lack of explanation. I think that's what gets into your brain and makes it that more scarier. So in a way, those writings, I usually put in quotations just to give that aspect of, okay, this just you're seeing this fragment of a situation. You don't know how it got there, and you don't know where it'll go from there. It's just this moment that's really freaky, you know?
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, horror as a genre is a super quotable thing in general. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just feels like horror as a genre is just like an amalgamation of a lot of the same types of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's interested me, and looking at like early folk tales and stuff like that that implement these kind of like scary stories. A lot of times it was
Mm-hmm.
like there was some sort of like moral or didactic thing, or they operated as like kind of a warning for the younger generation. And as these
To
things
scare
got
off the
passed
kids.
on, as
Mm-hmm.
these things get passed on, a lot of times the story, like a certain story, would kind of like change a little bit, or it would be
Mm-hmm.
brought from one part of the world to the other, and it would turn into some completely new thing. And we don't have
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like a good, sort of lineage of how these things change, but a lot of times it's like something that everyone can relate to, but told in a story that's like a little bit different. So I kind of like find it fascinating, these little quotes that you put on the side,
No,
because they
thanks,
do
man.
feel almost like they come from something greater than yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the initial idea for the old building, was to kind of make a narrative based collection, but I kind of just jumped into it because I was really, and actually it's an idea I've been thinking about like for around 3 or 4 years, ever since I lived in the other building. And but then I stopped in the middle because I was like, okay, I mean, if I want to make a narrative based thing, I have to flesh it out a bit better, you know. But the whole initial thing was to make it uh, a whole story, but not necessarily chronologically organized, but just, a lot of little snippets of things that happens in that building, in the said building. And yeah, but I'm slowly going back to that. Slowly going back to that because I've been missing doing these, and it's super fun doing these pieces.
And you do other topics too, like alchemy and tarot, which I want to ask you in a second. But welcome everybody who's listening, and if anybody wants to join the conversation, just put a request here, and I will happily bring you on stage. I may send out a few prank invites, and feel free to check that as well. So, Daniel W.,
Oh wow.
tell us about the alchemy business. Like you had a few works. Have you gone deep into alchemy? Was it just sort of a kind of a fun thing to do? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I that was around the time I was painting back in the pandemic, and I was sort of like creating this. I was working on these characters, which I still use today, and it was a way to pass the time to keep my mind busy. I kind of started creating this mythos of sort. Not something I necessarily believe in, but something a fun way of making these characters and giving them meaning and using them to explain certain things. And around the time I was painting, I came about. There was a video, I forgot the channel, because I have the habit of listening to video essays while I work, and I found this channel where the guy was analyzing the occult aspects and the alchemy aspects of the game Silent Hill 2, which is a game I'm very fond of, going back to horror, and uh, and it just struck me. I was like, oh damn, that's interesting, and I started going deeper from there. And I think what caught me the most about this whole thing is how open it is in a way. So you got alchemy engravings and such, and that symbolize certain things and certain aspects of the alchemical process. And but it's not, you don't have a dictionary for these things. I mean, you know that the sun, I mean, the green lion eating the sun symbolizes the halfway point of an alchemical process, but you don't have that written somewhere. It's just there in a picture, and you sort of, it's all very subjective in a way. And I like that. I like how how they rely heavily on symbolism to pass a message and to explain certain things, and how it's not exactly set in stone. So you kind of have to find your way through it in a way. And but I was really enamored with it, and I still am, because of the whole psychological aspect of it. I mean, Carl Jung, he'd write extensively about alchemy, uh, and it's interesting how the whole process how the whole process when when you look deeper into it, it has this whole meaning behind it that is not necessarily just turning, bronze into gold. I mean, it is, but it's more than that. It's you becoming the gold. It's you going through this whole arduous process of for lack of a better word, dying and then rotting and then just coming back a better person. And that just caught me in a way in a certain moment in my life when I thought, oh yeah, that's really cool, and I like the message and I like the teachings, and and I think it fit in a way with what I was doing at the time. So I kind of just picked it up and ran with it. I mean, I haven't been using it that much in my late pieces, but it's something I revisit constantly, which I'm very fond of. I like. I enjoy the symbolism behind the images, and the whole idea behind the process of it. It's very human, I think, and it when you come to analyze it deeply, these are sorts of things that can strike a chord with absolutely anyone. I mean, and I don't mean in a religious sense. I mean, it's, like I said, it's very human. It's super. Everyone
Exactly.
goes through these kind of things. Huh?
Exactly, like you're saying, everyone goes through these things. I was going to say it's kind of like the connection for me is like your work seems to have a very psychological aspect to it, right? I mean, whether it's the
Uh-huh.
rooms, and then there, as you're saying with Carl Jung and alchemy is like kind of a guidebook of sorts, of realizing the
Uh-huh.
soul in a certain sort of way and this kind of
Yes.
maturation, right? This awakening of
Mm-hmm.
sorts, or whatever you want to call it. So there's kind of an interesting, and even again, this tarot business that you're doing, because I think you've done some tarot stuff as well, if I'm not mistaken. And even the mushrooms, you could argue, indirectly. There's also, just with the psychedelic mushrooms and everything, like there does seem to be
Yes.
this
Yes.
this thread, through your work that is kind of psychological in nature.
Yeah. Tarot was kind of it was a funny thing that happened to me actually. Tarot just kind of happened to me because it was a few years back. My grandmother, she passed away, and she's from Italy. And while rummaging around her things, I found her old Neapolitan card deck, and my mom said, "Oh, keep it." Okay. And at first, I didn't, I didn't pay too much attention to it, and then I just kept it away. And last year, it popped up in the middle of my things while I was organizing a few things, and I flipped around the cards, and I'm like, man, this is interesting. I mean, it's from the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. The deck, it's super old. I mean, it's been through a lot. It's been in Italy, then it came to Brazil, and I was like, damn. Well, let's find out more about it, because, well, I mean, it's a heirloom. It's something, my grandmother left for us, and that's when I started going deeper into tarot. And I found, and I was already very fond of alchemy and psychology and all that, and it was interesting to find that tarot ended up being just another instrument in this whole um, part I was interested in. It was because obviously there's this whole esoteric side to it, but there's a whole psychological aspect to it. I mean, as a tool to better understand yourself, it's very effective. It makes you when you're pulling cards, it makes you think. Sometimes makes you think about things you wouldn't think about, and see situations in a way you previously wouldn't see, and see yourself in ways you previously wouldn't see. So it's an interesting tool for self discovery, and I've always been interested by the whole how can I put this? I've always been interested with, for lack of a better word, chaos, the randomness, and I think tarot is a bit of an instrument of chaos in a way, because you shuffle the cards and you just pull the cards, and it's so random, but it's despite how random. Sometimes, of course, you'll pull a card and you're like, "What the fuck, dude? This doesn't make sense for what I'm going through now." But most of the times, I mean, like good 99% of the times, they'll pull a card and it'll make you think about something that you probably perhaps weren't thinking about before, and it's like, wow, it's just this. It's just this micro version of the universe in a way, and it's randomness and chaoticness. Yeah. So it's interesting, and I like the whole the symbols behind it as well. It's very inspiring for me in a way, and it just fits into the whole context of everything that inspires me. You know, with, like I said, with psychology and alchemy and occult. It's cool. I like it, and I started collecting after that. I started collecting decks after that, which was another hook for me, because like we were talking about hobbies before, I was like I said, it came to a point where I was like, okay, I don't have a hobby. My hobby became my job, which obviously is super fucking cool, but now I need another hobby. So I thought, well, let's collect fucking tarot decks as a hobby then, because this won't turn into my job. So it's strictly a hobby now. So it has all these pulls for me.
Well, it seems like your work, like I'm sure you must have thought about making your own tarot deck. Like I see the Eight of Swords here on your profile, but I don't see too many. Have you ever thought about making your own card deck, or are you making your own card deck?
Oh, definitely. It's something that's in my plans, but I've been thinking about it for a couple of months now. But I was like, I mean, I could just start out, but there's so much symbolism behind the cards and behind the images, and they're not just random images. Each one of them have, it's all very meticulously pieced together, and everything has a meaning to it. I mean, from the position of the characters in the images to what's drawn in the foreground. So I thought, well, first I want to get to know these cards better, you know, and understand them better, and understand why each of them has the image they has, and why each of them means what they means, to then start creating mine, so I can make it as respectful as I can, because I mean, it's because I mean, if I make a tarot deck, I hope people will print it out or whatever, and pull the cards, and and so if people do that, I want them to have an experience like you would have by pulling cards from a Smith White deck, for example, which is the traditional tarot deck. And so I'm first studying the whole thing first, then eventually I'll get to that, because it's something that's a project I really want to do, but I want
And
to get to know. Huh?
I was going to say, and it sounds like you want to do it right. You want to have the real deal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Because you have all these novelty decks, which I mean, okay, it's fine, it's fun. You can, there's no problem. Far from me to judge, somebody for doing a tarot deck that's, fucking Simpsons tarot deck, or fucking, that's okay. But I don't want to do that. I want to, I want to do like, I want it to have meaning. I want people to be able to get something out of it, when they pull the cards and do a reading for themselves or for other people. I want to be legit, you know.
Yeah,
So I'm for
you want to do
huh?
justice to the whole tradition.
Exactly. I want to get to it as respectfully as I can, because I mean me included. There's a lot of people who take it very seriously. So I mean, if I'm gonna do it, I want to do, like you said, I want to do it right. So, but it's definitely in my plans. It's definitely something I want to do probably by the end of the year. But you know, still some ways before that.
Yeah, you might not want to rush it too much. And so, just a quick detail question on your Nunna's Neapolitan deck. Were those Scopa cards or was that tarot?
Scopa cards. Yeah,
They were Scopa
because
cards.
they
So
don't
what is
have
the
the.
is there a
Oh,
relationship between Scopa and tarot?
I mean, they. Not that I'm aware of, but there probably has in a way. I mean, you can still do readings with those.
Oh,
There's,
really?
yeah. I've been spending.
I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
it
Huh?
I was just going to say it's so funny. I mean, you just kind of hit a nerve here because I think the first place I ever played Scopa, which are Italian, trading cards for those that
Mhm.
might not know, was in Naples. And I haven't been to Naples since when I was like 6.
Really?
And I
Huh.
played, yeah, it's like almost like you're in Naples. You don't play trading card or regular, card decks. You play Scopa,
Hmm.
you which is
Ah,
so cool.
that's cool. Are you Italian? Because Belly sounds very Italian.
Yeah, we had family actually in Naples back
Oh,
in the
cool.
day. We actually had property back in the day. The war kind of screwed
Oh.
things up, World War II. But yeah, no,
Uh-huh.
it was like Roman Naples was sort of where a lot of the Pocabellies were based.
Mm.
So yeah. Anyway, so my
Oh,
dad
that's
and
cool,
family
dude.
vacation when I was 6 years old, we went over to Naples and Rome. You know,
Ah, that's
yeah,
awesome, dude.
yeah, it's
But
hilarious.
yeah, I
So
mean, but yeah, I mean the cards there because they don't have major arcanas. They're just the suites and the numbers. And my grandma she had this deck and another one, but a much newer one. But this one, I think it's from the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. It's super fucking old.
oh,
Uh,
you should post that on Twitter. I'd love to see that, like a picture of that,
yeah,
if you still have them
I will.
around.
I will. I'll post. Yeah, I have them kept really safe here. I mean, I pull them out on rare occasion to do some readings, but I mean, I just keep them inside a little black baggie and on my shelf because this is something I'm taking for the rest of my life. It's amazing. But I'll post a few pictures today. I posted a few. I think it was last year, end of last year, or
Hmm.
something like that when I picked them up again. But I'll post a few pictures because they're super cool. They're very beautiful and they're super old. Uh,
Oh,
it's
that's cool.
yeah, it is.
Well, we are an hour in here. We're probably going to start to wrap up again. If anybody wants to come on stage and ask Daniel W. a question, this is a wonderful opportunity. And
Oh, damn!
also,
Already we are.
we're already an hour in, but there's no rush. But so tell us, what are you going to work on? What are you working on now? Like you have these characters that you're describing, and it kind of seems like it's almost like this animation that you kind of had of sorts. I mean, these characters and
Hmm.
everything. Speak a little bit about that because it sounds like something that could be easily turned at some point into like a cartoon or something. But anyways, just talk
Oh
about that if you
yeah.
don't mind.
Well, I mean, one of my big influences, aside from horror and occult and alchemy and such, has always been street art. And I've always been very fond of characters. When people spray paint characters, it, I've always liked it. It's super cool, and we have a very rich culture of street art in Brazil, and especially São Paulo. And and a few years back, I started drawing this face, which ended up being my signature. And I started working around. Then I made this devil character. Then I thought, okay, cool. I like this. I like this guy. He's fun. He looks like a cheeky motherfucker. then well, let's make a counterpart for him, and that's when I made the Pyramid Head character, which would, I mean, I think you could call it God or something, and it just started. They started out as something really fun to draw, which I could put everywhere. You know, back in my music videos, I'd sort of fit them in somewhere here and there.
So you've done some street art.
Mhm.
You've done some street art in Brazil.
No. But I've been around a lot of people who have. I'm friends with a lot of people who do graffiti, who do pichação. So I mean, I've been exposed to it ever since I was a kid, and I mean, living in São Paulo specifically, it's kind of impossible to not be exposed to it because we we have this. How can I say this? We have this very São Paulo ish style of street art we call pichação, which was initially based off of um, heavy metal logos. They just spray paint on the wall, but then it started turning into something else. I'll post a few pictures for you afterwards so you can see. And it became its own thing after a while, after the 80s and 90s. And it's very São Paulo-ish because nobody else in Brazil does it like we do here. And whenever people around here see something like it, oh yeah, that's, you know, it's São Paulo, yeah. So, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's hard to find a house without pichação, you know. And so I've always been exposed to it. I've always had friends who did it, but I've always been kind of I don't know. I've always been kind of lazy to pick up a spray paint and do it myself. but uh, but it's something that inspires me a lot. I'm very much inspired by it. So these characters came about sort of in a way, kind of like that. And what was the question again? Sorry.
Basically, what do you want to do with the characters? Like, do you have any plans with them? And sort of, what are you working on in the future here? Or what are your plans kind of coming up?
Oh yeah, well, the characters I plan on fleshing them out a bit better because I sort of just dropped them here and there after I came into Tezos. I haven't actually give them a background or explained them better. So I actually even started another account on Object just to focus on them, which I started a whole collection, which is tarot card based, and each one would be one character, and where I explain them a bit better so people understand where they come from. And but this is kind of in the back burner a bit because I kind of went through a phase a couple of weeks back, a bit of a creative block in a way. So I was just kind of testing things out, trying things in different styles, and revisiting my old style of animation, and until I kind of got myself back on rails again. And that's when I started doing the whole Faceless collection, which is these one of one PFPs, which at first weren't supposed to be that. I did the first one, which is Old Roots, which was sourced only to be this character with this drawing inside, which I felt like doing. But then my partner, she said, "Well, why don't you turn it into a PFP?" And I was like, "Well, damn, yeah, true." Because I've been meaning to do a collection, a PFP collection, for a minute now. So I thought, well, no, it's a good opportunity to do that. And I started focusing on that these last few days, and I've been sort of counterbalancing both things, doing these and doing the more horror oriented background pieces, sort of coming back to the old building a bit. So these are the two main things I've been working on these past few days, and I'll be working on for the next few days. Eventually, I'll go back to the characters and continue the tarot collection with them. But first, I want to get these out of the way. and just taking advantage of the opportunity to plug in one thing I'm going to do today later on. I'll be dropping one of these pieces more atmospheric. Will be the first one I'll be dropping on Ethereum today, later tonight. But I'll be dropping one on Tezos today, later, like in a couple of hours as well. So yeah, these are a few things I've been working on, and I'm going to be working on for the next few days.
That's great. And just as we're sort of wrapping up here, just a little bit on Ethereum before we go here. So are you dropping on, refresh my memory, is it on Manifold that I thought I saw work on Manifold XYZ, but are you also on Foundation or Super Rare? Where are you putting work out on Ethereum?
Man, I wish it wasn't super rare.
I'm sure you
But
could get on.
not.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I tried out like in the end of December of last year, but they didn't come back to me yet. So it's all good. But I dropped a piece. It was the last Redux piece on Foundation, and I'll still have there. But I'm doing the smart contract on Manifold. I'm minting through the Manifold, but then I'm listing on Foundation.
Right. I like that, actually. I think I did the same thing recently. Actually, I mean, it's interesting. Technically you can mint on Super Rare and then list on Foundation if you want to, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
cool thing
it's
about
really funny how that
Foundation.
works. Right?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Foundation's
I
cool
mean,
in that sense. Yeah, like they let you do it's basically an auction function, right?
yeah. Initially, I tried listing on the Manifold Gallery, which is super cool, but the whole deal with it doesn't have that search function which Foundation has. So I delisted it and relisted it on Foundation, which I mean, what do you I mean, like I said, the Manifold Gallery is super cool, but you'll have to sort of depend only on Twitter mouth to mouth.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
algorithm has been a bitch lately, so
Yeah, like I
so it's
mean,
kind of
it's
hard
the
to
social
depend on that.
network. It's the social network side of these platforms that are the real like value because it's sort of
Yeah.
like if you list on Object, for example, I'm going to get a notification and I'm going to see about that, right? And then if I'm following you on
Yeah.
Foundation, then I'll get maybe an email that you have listed on
Oh,
Foundation.
I think
So it really is. Yeah, go ahead.
it is. That's why I'm so fond of Object. By the way, I mean that's the first thing that caught to me when I first started minting an Object. This whole uh, social media aspect of it's really cool. I mean, it's so much easier to find new work and follow up on on artists you like. I mean, it's really cool. I like that aspect. So yeah, I'll mint it on Foundation later today because you know it's easier.
Are there any artists that you've been collecting or people you've been looking at recently that have really caught your attention?
Oh yeah. Well, let me just open up my own page here. Just a second. I mean, one artist I've been collecting a lot lately has been Capin or Chico Jam. He does some really
Oh yeah.
cool pixel art. I love his work. Yeah, his work is fucking amazing, dude. And there's this other person, Kuda, who also does some
I don't know if
pixel
that
work.
is familiar.
A lot of CMY. Huh?
Oh, I
And
was
there's a
just
lot
saying,
of
I don't
pixel
think
work.
I'm familiar.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it to you afterwards. It's a lot of really cool pixel work, and I like it because they do these pieces which look like old game UIs, and I love that so much. It's so fucking awesome. And there's this one I found these days in the beginning of the week. Let me just open up because I don't remember her name now. Um, on object, she's as Aripla, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry if I butchered your name. Tacy Aripla, and she does these paintings which are kind of they're super eerie and phantasmagorical. I love them. She, in fact, she does have some collection called Lost Ghosts, and it's all super. I mean, it's not horror oriented or anything, but it's got this eerie feel to it, and I just love it. All the subjects of her paintings, they're just these. They have this phantasmagorical feel to it. I mean, I've been really, really, really in love with her work. And what else I've been picking up like lately? Let me just check it out.
Yeah, I'm checking out these artists right now. You're right. The Kuda, the Arita, that's good stuff.
Oh yeah, I've been
And
picking up
kind of, it looks
a
like
few
they're a little
by.
bit new.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're newcomers. I've been picking up a few from Popple as well. Popple's just fucking amazing. Their pixel work is off the fucking charts. I picked this one up lately by Board Boy, which uh, which is also, well. I mean, pixel art I'm very fond of pixel art. Sometimes I joke around, say that I'm a frustrated pixel artist because I've always wanted to do pixel art, but I've never had the patience to do it. But I'm a super fan of pixel art. It's so fucking cool. And then there's the usuals. I try to pick up whenever I can, like Kappa Sage. I love his work. Calvet, he's also a Brazilian artist. His work's fucking amazing. Turo, he's fucking awesome. I mean, there's so many, dude. Unfortunately, I like to be picking up more art than I do lately, but bills and shit. So, but I always try to pick up a thing here and there just to keep things flowing. Uh, it, it's funny. There's so many amazing artists on Tesla. It's just mind blowing, dude. I
I have
remember
to
when I
agree.
first. Yeah, it's amazing. I remember when I first came to Tezos, and and I was just scrolling through all the art and all the different kinds of artists, and it's so amazing to see all these different kinds of artists just doing their thing and being super artistically honest. It's so inspiring. It's super fucking cool. I love it. So yeah, but these are a few I've been picking up lately, and I'll probably pick up a few later. A lot of cool people. Tom Bombadil's been doing some cool things as well with his Spectrum collection. Um, so there's this other pixel artist that I'm very fond of, Stalomir. They dropped
Yeah.
a piece which I really love. Yeah, the what's the name of the piece? Phantom. God damn it! Open up so I can see the name.
Yeah,
What's the name of the
Stalomir.
thing?
I was in a pixel art space that Retro Manny had put on. Shout out Retro Manny. I see you down there.
Mm.
And what was so fascinating about Stalomir is he comes from a family of stained glass makers, right? Like
Oh,
so like
really?
they yeah, so that's like why he kind of has this kind of stained glass look. Isn't that
Oh,
interesting?
wow, that's so cool. That's so cool,
Yeah,
dude. Wow.
yeah.
I picked
This
up that
Kuda character.
Phantom.
Sorry, go
Huh?
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I picked up the Phantom of Abandoned Water Tower they dropped a few weeks back, and I just love that piece, dude. It's so fucking awesome. But damn, the whole stained glass story, that's so cool, dude. I wasn't aware of that.
It kind of explains a lot. If I think it was
No,
Stalomir.
yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking was it Stalomir? Or wait, maybe it's someone else. I might be Armilk. Sorry, I confused him with Armilk 88. My mistake. Sorry. I'm just seeing Stalomir's page here. It's Armilk 88. I think is the name of
Oh,
the artist. I'm checking out Kuda here too. You have a very interesting collection here. I picked up the cat. I've been shopping while you've been talking. Like Kuda,
what?
Arcana Territory. That's rad. That video game artist. Like, wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
so
you guys
awesome,
are
dude.
already talking
Yeah, this Arcana
about it. Yeah.
territory. Yeah, there's so much books. It's funny because here in Brazil, I know a lot of indie devs, and I know a lot of pixel art artists involved in the development of games and such. And and it was always very frustrating because I'm a big fan of them, and I'd always be like, dude, this was before NFTs, and I'd be, dude, just make a print or whatever. I pay whatever for something. with these pixel art and shit, and but they never do it. They'd always be, just focused on making games, which is cool, which is okay. And that's what struck me the most. I mean, when getting into NFTs, it's just that, wow, now I can finally purchase pixel art, in its truest form. I mean, it's there.
I agree. It's so exciting. And so, well, we should probably wrap this up. I'm going to have to go here pretty soon. Do you have any final thoughts, Daniel W., that you'd just like us to know? Any sort of ideas or thoughts? What do you want us to know that maybe we haven't heard yet?
Oh, well, closing thoughts. Well, damn, dude, thanks for having me, dude. It's been super fun. It's been nice being able to break out of my shell. Sorry about if in the start it was still kind of anxious or whatever, but it's been super fun being here, man.
Well,
And
you've
yeah,
been
It's been great to have you.
Yeah, you never would have
thanks,
guessed
man.
that you had it. That you were stumbling there. So yeah, no, we're always hardest on ourselves on these things. So yeah, beautifully done, Daniel.
Definitely, definitely. Hey, thanks, man.
No, it's
Thanks,
great to
guys,
have you.
and
And
well, thanks.
Runtune, do you have any closing thoughts for us here?
I'm really happy you introduced us to these last couple artists here. Gives us a little more
Yeah, cool.
creative food here.
I totally agree. I'm learning about new artists here. Literally, I was shopping. I wish I could afford Cuda. Cuda is like a really rad artist. Cuda. I'll have to check out your collection a little more. There's always new discoveries on Tezos and everywhere in this whole NFT ecosystem. Well, thanks again, Daniel W. And thank you again,
Hey, thanks for
Runtune,
having
for
me.
being and doing a wonderful job as usual. That was a fabulous, super interesting show, and the scope of cards were probably my highlight here. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and listening in. And until next time, take care.